was a book we had when our daughter was little. It was called Everyone Poops. Well, it's true. We all do it. But when you have an RV, you have to think about, well, where do you do it? Or I guess more accurately, what you use to go. You know, like where you sit. Anyway, for those who've joined us on our journey, you know that we're looking into a lot of different models of Class B RVs, and what we've noticed is when it comes to number 2, you have a lot of options. It was getting a little complex to think about the different styles of toilet out there. I mean, we live in a house. There's essentially one. But in an RV, especially one where you can get some customized choices, the field is wide open. So I did a little research. It's what I do. And so I present to you RV toilet comparisons. So let's begin with the cassette toilet. Now, cassette toilet is a permanent toilet with a portable tank that can be detached and taken to a regular toilet or some other suitable area for dumping, so it makes it kind of convenient to use as a tank for your waste. Now, I chose 2 days before dumping, and why did I do that? Well, the containers for the waste in the cassette are smaller, so they need to be dumped pretty often. So keep that in mind if you decide to choose a cassette toilet. You're going to be dumping a lot. Now, I had to make some assumptions. For instance, I'm assuming that you're going to be dumping into a free public toilet. And since you're doing that, it's not going to cost you anything to dump. It's free. And if it doesn't cost you anything to dump, that means your monthly cost is also free. Now, there are some issues that you have to deal with. You need to find a toilet to dump in. You have to deal with handling a heavy container. It can be pretty heavy. And of course, you risk a messy experience when dumping. I found a emptying a cassette toilet video on YouTube, so you can get a little bit better idea of how these cassette toilets work. So the next thing to look at are tanks. There's a couple things to look at: cassette tanks and black tanks. Cassette tanks are cassette toilets that have been modified so they can dump through a sewer hose. I found these on the Embassy RV site. It looks like this is the only place that does those. Then there's the traditional black tank that you see in most RVs, and they're usually under the RV, and it collects waste like a cassette toilet would, except that's a little larger. And then you still have to dump it through some kind of a sewer hose. Now, the black tanks come in a whole bunch of different sizes, but since we're looking at mostly Class B RVs, those are around 10 gallons or so. So I think you have to keep that in mind, that I'm not looking at the really large Class A black tanks that are much, much larger. That's why I have 5 days before dumping, as opposed to, 10 days, 15 days, whatever. So keep that in mind. I had to make some assumptions about how long it takes to dump, and also how much does it cost to dump. I don't have an actual price for that. I've heard everyone say between free and $10 and $20 and $30. So it was really hard to decide how much does it cost to dump your waste. Because remember, you have to dump waste in some kind of a sewage facility. You can't take a big giant black tank out and just dump it into a toilet. It's going to cost money, or at least you have to have some kind of free connection into a sewage system. So I went to a website called rvdump.com. Now, it lists just thousands of places that you can dump, and they are everything from free to over $30 per dump. So there were far too many to count, and they were all color-coded based on cost. So It was just too complex. So what I did is I took screenshots of just different areas of the country, and I just counted all the different places. Now, if it said that it cost $10 or less, I just assumed that that place cost $10. Same thing was $20 or $30. And they had a category that was over $30. I had to make an assumption that that was $40. Could I be off? Sure. Do I care? No. It's just an average. We're just trying to get a general idea. Now, rest areas were always shown as free, so they're included in the calculations. But then they had a lot of places that no price was given, so I couldn't include those at all. Also, there were places that asked for donations. Who knows what you're going to donate, so I couldn't donate. I couldn't add that either. So I ended up with a big chart that showed me the number of places I was able to count and how much they were each cost. And I ended up with an average of $7.40. So that's what I used, $7.40. So getting back to the tanks, I put in a $7.40 cost per dump. And what that does is gives us an average of $111 per month for the cassette and $44.40 for the black tank, and that's because I have to dump the cassette more often than the black tank, so keep that in mind. The big advantage of these tanks is you don't pull out the tank, you just hook it up. Now if you hook it up all properly to a sewage disposal area, then you have a lot less chance for like a mishap than you would a cassette, so that's something to consider. Now there are issues. You need to find a dump station, you need to pay for the dump, and you have to store that hose and keep it clean. So keep that in mind. I found a emptying a black tank video on YouTube, so if you want to see what that's like, please go ahead and visit that site. Next up is the composting toilet. Now, composting toilets are sometimes called dry toilets. They use a compost material like peat or coconut coir to decompose the matter. So I chose 15 days before dumping. Now you go, why 15 days? I found some places that said 30 days. Some people saying they were lasting the entire month. Other people were saying, a couple weeks at best. But I found a website, Nature's Head, and they actually sell composting toilets, and they're estimating a maximum of 3 weeks for 2 people. But a lot of these people are using a separate can for toilet paper to extend their time. So I just decided 15 days. It was easy because that's half a month. That's going to be easy to divide into costs. Now, there was another problem. We have a lot of assumptions to make because I have to figure out what you're going to put into this stuff, and there's a lot of different materials you can buy. And so I chose this product that was coco coir, which is basically ground up coconut shells, and they put them in these bricks, and they dehydrate them, I guess, so that they're solid and they're easy to carry around. This company had 3 blocks for $19. And so that kind of worked out pretty well. Now, the issue also was I didn't know how much of this stuff to put into the toilet. I mean, how many pounds do you stick into this thing? Or gallons, or whatever they go by. But what was good is the Nature's Head, I finally found a little tiny statement, which was hard to find, but I found it. And it said it used, I think it was 2 pounds, 2 gallons. I can't remember what they used to count pounds and gallons. And it ended up, I looked at the product that I was looking at as coco coir, and when you rehydrated it, it gave you those 2 pounds, gallons, whatever it was. So 1 brick would end up lasting 15 days, so that was easy to calculate. So my cost per dump ended up being $6.33, which means my cost per month was $12.67, which is a lot cheaper than the $45 or over $100 for the tanks. Now you got to remember that there are some issues. You need to dump liquid waste every 3 to 4 days. It is in a separate little container, and you don't really want to mix that up with the solid, or it won't become compost, it'll just be waste. So you do have to take that out and dump it into a toilet. It's a small container, so it's not too noticeable, so that shouldn't be an issue. There are a few other issues also. You needed to buy compost material, and you needed to carry that material with you, and of course you needed to prepare the material for use, and that took a lot of prep, and I'll get into that a little later. Now, I did find a website, a YouTube video, how to prep and dump a composting toilet. So if you're interested, go visit that website and see what you can see. Now finally, there's the Lavio, and it's made by Dry Flush, and this is truly Dry Flush because it doesn't use water. And it uses these self-sealing mylar type bags to enclose the waste every time you flush, so it's completely sealed. You never see a thing. And that was kind of nice. And I chose 4 days per dump, so it could last 4 days. Now, there was a lot of research I had to do to figure this out. The company says you get about 17 flushes per cartridge, but I've seen other people say 14, 15, 16, whatever, so I just decided to use 16 flushes because that was easy to divide by. Now, how many flushes do you do a day? I chose 2 people because that's probably how we're going to travel, and I said 4 flushes a day because both of us might go in the morning, and then both of us might go in the evening, and during the day we're somewhere else so we can find public toilets. So we're looking at 4 flushes a day, and that means you're going to be spending $1.33 per flush. Now, how is this stuff sold? The cheapest I could find was actually from Dry Flush, and that was a 5-pack of 3 cartridges each, which was $318, or in other words, $21.22 per cartridge. And since you use a cartridge every time you change, that means you are going to be spending $21.22 every time you dump, or $159.15, just under $160 per month. Now there are some issues. Of course, you need to purchase the cartridges, you need to carry the cartridges, and to save money, you may not want to flush just liquid waste, because that's again $1.33 down the flush. I found a website on how the Lavio works, so please feel free to go there to see how this works and whether or not this might interest you. So where does this leave us? We have a lot of different prices here. Obviously the cheapest is the cassette because it's free, but the next cheapest would be the composting toilet. Now if all you're doing is looking at prices, those are probably the ones you're going to look at, but there's a lot of other stuff to think about. Yes, the Lavio costs a lot more money than some of the other options, but there's a lot of the convenience factor there to think about. So if you start thinking about everything, not just money but convenience, let's start off with the cassette toilet. Again, you need to find the toilet to dump in, you need to deal with handling that very heavy container, and that is 50 pounds of weight of liquid and waste. And of course, you do risk a messy experience when you dump, but it's free. So keep that in mind. Now the tanks are going to use water just like the cassettes do. So you're going to be using up water every time you flush. And of course, you need a sewage connection to dump. If you're at an RV park and you go, oh, that's why it's free, it's great because they've got a dump. But except that RV parks that provide dumping stations are going to charge you more. So if you go to an RV park that is, let's say, $20 a night, but they don't have any dump, and you compare that to a place that does have a dump and they charge you $40, you are essentially spending $20 so that you can have a dump site. So keep that in mind. It's not always free, even if you think it's free. Now the advantage, of course, is as long as you hook everything up, you don't really see anything. It just dumps everything out and you're done, and there you go. And there are a lot of free sites all over the place, rest areas and other places that don't charge you anything, or some places that really charge you hardly anything, like $5. So it may be a way to go. Now the composting toilets, they last a long time before you have to dump, and then you just throw everything away like in the garbage, or better yet, like compost. Now, you do have to empty the liquid tank more often, and of course, you have to deal with prepping the compost, and that takes a lot of prep. You have to rehydrate that material, that clay or whatever you're using, and that takes time and that takes water. You also have to remove that toilet from the RV to do all of this and to dump the material. You have to put a bag around it and dump it all out. And of course, if you have a mishap, that would be messy. But it is a lot cheaper than most of those other options, a lot cheaper. So it may be worth having to do that every 15 days and 30 days. That's up to you. The Lavio, even though they cost more than the other options, you got to remember they're the least work of all the options, and they're the cleanest too. And it's the only option that doesn't use any water at all. So you have the convenience of you simply pull that little Mylar bag system out, you throw it away in a garbage can, and you are done. You don't see anything, you don't smell anything, it's gone. So that is very cool. And you're not using any water. So you can save your water for drinking water and for washing and that kind of stuff. But you pay for that convenience. So that's something you're going to have to think about. So in the end, there really is no best option. It really depends on what you're willing to put up with, what you need to do to prep for a dump, how you travel in your RV, and what are you willing to pay to empty that toilet? You know, basically, there ain't no free lunch. It's got to go somewhere. Be seeing you.